After all the hype that you've heard over the course of the last 2 years about the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, we're proud to announce our new venture, the Women of Conservation Calendar, that showcases and celebrates the women that helped defeat Proposition 127. 14 months of the calendar of all of the women that helped, plus more, the convention dates, deadlines, draw application dates, commission meetings, and things going on at the Colorado State Capitol. This is an opportunity to support CRWM and the efforts that we continually work on through the Colorado State Capitol, Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, and to address all of the ballot issues that continually arise. We've got some fantastic sponsors that help prop up and just showcase who these women are. Rodeo queens, barrel racers, houndswomen, general sportsmen, mothers, and every avocation you could think, from archery hunting to muzzleloading to rifle hunting and waterfowl as well. These women stuck their necks out to help save the hunt. Get it for yourself. It makes a great gift. Make sure you get it before Christmas, and look at all the other important dates that are coming up. $24.95, SaveTheHuntColorado.com.
Through the Gates is produced under the support of the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. That's our mission. We're engaged in fighting at every level so that wildlife management remains science-based and conservation continues to work for our wildlife. To learn more and join the movement, visit SaveTheHuntColorado.com. The North American model of wildlife conservation is the greatest conservation model in the world. It's a success story that should be shared and celebrated because everybody is a part of it.
So we got another episode of Through the Gates to Save the Hunt, and I am pleased again to sit here with Caitlyn Taussig, who is a rancher and cattlewoman and a lot of different things. We're up in Kremling, Colorado at the Blue Valley Gun Club, and we got the opportunity to use this facility and try to save some people a little bit of travel time. So Caitlyn, give us a little bit of rundown on who you are, and you're a lifelong resident of this valley. You were born in Kremling, but give us a little bit of rundown.
I'm a fourth-generation rancher in Greene County. I was born in Kremling when they still delivered babies at the hospital. And so my mom and I ranched together. We started out in the Williams Fork Valley. You've had some of the Williams Fork guys on the podcast before. So the ranch I grew up on is Doug Bruchet, who was on the podcast. His family owns that now. So we were started in the Williams Fork, and then in 2000 we sold that ranch, looked all over the western United States, and couldn't bear to leave this area. So we bought a ranch 20 miles away. So we're north of Kremling now, on what's historically the Hinman Ranch. And my mom and I ranch together. We have a small cow-calf operation. And then I'm also a musician, so that's how I kind of make a little side living, because ranching is not really a high-paying job.
So did you get your background in music because you were rounding up the doggies on the Great Plains and stuff, or how did you get into music?
My dad, who I haven't mentioned because he was the patriarch of our whole thing, but he passed away in 2019. He loved to sing, and he and my mom got my guitar for me when I was 8, and so he and I used to sing together, and that's, I guess, where my music came from. But so I've been singing since childhood.
So on the ranching side, I mean, do you remember anything other than ranching?
No, not at all.
That's all you've done.
Yeah. My sister and I would, my parents would be in the hayfield. We would ride our horses out bareback to have lunch with my mom so that she knew that we were still alive. Because we had, when my parents were working, they had a friend to look after us when we were little. But it wasn't very long before we were looking after ourselves, kind of just playing while they were working. And so we just were off playing in irrigation ditches while they're irrigating or haying or whatever. And we always helped with the cattle work from like little kids. We were riding and helping my mom with the cows. So yeah, that's a great childhood.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. And then I went to college and got a degree in ecology and evolutionary biology, because I was going to be a wildlife biologist. And so I actually worked for CPW for a couple seasons.
Really?
Yeah, as a fisheries technician here out of the hot sulfur office.
Okay.
That was my first job out of college, and I kept just like on the off season I was working on the ranch. And my boss would call me and be like, "You ready to go?" And I'm like, "No, I'm busy dragging meadows." And I just kind of fell back into the ranch. I never meant to be a lifelong rancher.
Mhm.
I had all these plans to, you know, be a mammal biologist in Africa and stuff, or work for CPW. And I just kind of fell back in love with it. And just, that was it. Started ranching in my 20s. And
So ranching anywhere, it's not, you're not the typical rancher. You and your mom, paired up together, you're not the typical agriculture producer anywhere.
probably not. There's been a lot of interest in like women in ranching here lately, but there's always been women in ranching, of course. I think what makes us unique is that we don't have any men on the operation at the moment. My dad passed away, and he was already very old. He was 60 when I was born, so like he was an old dad. But he retired finally, I think, when he was 83
Really?
from driving the tractor. And then he spent some time cooking meals for all of us. So we had a lot of meatloaf because that was like the only thing he could cook. So once he was kind of had stepped back out of the picture. And then I also have a sister who she helps us on the ranch still, but she works and lives full time on another ranch. So it's my mom and I full time at the place. And then we have my sister come and help. We have some family and some neighbors, we help each other out in the ranching community as well. But the day-to-day is just the two of us.
And what's a typical day? I asked Nikki and Amanda this type of thing too. What's a typical day for you on the ranch? I mean, let's say, what's a typical day in spring, summer, fall
Yeah.
versus winter?
I was going to say it totally depends on the time of year. Ranching in this environment is so cyclical. It's completely dependent on the seasons. So yes, winter is pretty quiet. We're just feeding cows, and we also feed a herd of guest ranch horses. So we have our cow herd and then a herd of 76 dude horses that we feed in the winter.
Okay.
So winter's pretty much just feeding. Summer or spring, we start calving. So that's round the clock. You're in your cows, you're checking them, you're making sure everything's going well. We calve really close to the house. That helps us with predator protection from coyotes and things like that. So spring is very busy. And then you start rolling into getting ready to irrigate. We flood irrigate to raise hay to feed our cows in the winter. So spring, we're still calving, we're irrigating, we're sorting, we're branding. May and June are just insane. And then we're getting out to our high country pastures in June. We don't have any public ground leases. We're all on private ground.
You're all on private.
Yep, which is
That's an anomaly anymore.
it is. And historically the ranch that we have had a grazing lease, but I still don't understand all the ins and outs of how forest permits are passed around. There's these weird little loopholes and complications, and we thought we could get a permit naively when we came over here, but it turns out it's very difficult to pick up a permit unless there's
Even for ground that touches your ground?
Yep, because that permit got reattached to the neighboring ranch.
Oh, okay.
So it's now a part of a different ranch. So as these ranches kind of grow and change. So that was a learning curve, and we've leased a lot of ground, different grass in the valley. We're in the Muddy Valley. So for a while we were calling ourselves gypsy ranchers. We had cattle all over the place, and we still do. We have a pretty small cow herd. We're not big ranchers, and we run in 5 different pastures in the summer. So, and then that brings us into summer. We're irrigating, we're growing hay, and we're checking our cows, which if they were all in one pasture would be, run up a couple times a week and really get a good look at them. But because they're in 5 different places that take trailering and riding and many hours of riding to find cattle, it is hard to get around and get everybody really checked and looked at well. We spend a lot of time riding in the summer. And then fall, we're getting our cattle down out of the high country right now. So we brought some cattle down yesterday. Friday, we'll bring the rest down. They'll be on the hay meadows. We'll vaccinate our calves. We'll ship our calves in November and preg test our cows next Monday. And then we kind of get everything buttoned up for winter. So that's pretty much the whole year of ranching.
And how long you been on that place?
Since 2000, so 25 years.
Okay. So, and did you think at that point in time that you were going to make a part-time living off that, a full-time living? I mean, you were doing all the CPW stuff somewhere between then and now.
Yeah. There was a time when all of us, mom, my sister, and I, all three had full-time jobs in town, and we were also running our ranch. It was insane. I was sleeping in my car at lunch. I was the 4-H coordinator working at the extension office, and we were calving, and we were taking days off trying to keep. So it's hard to make a living on a ranch that is as small as ours. It's hard to make a living ranching anywhere, but that's kind of where the music came in for me. I was able to have that be my supplemental income so that I could ranch full time. So that was kind of the dream when that worked out.
So, and because I'm ignorant to it, are you a recording artist?
Well,
And you go out on tour, or is this how does that work?
Well, my kind of genre of music, I call it like Western folk or ranch folk music, but some people call it cowboy music. It is the smallest, most like obscure genre of music you can have. So I've picked like ranching and cowboy music. So you're making just hundreds of dollars a year. So it's kind of obscure, but I sing locally at bars, guest ranches. I go to cowboy gatherings, cowboy poetry gatherings. I'll sing at the Ranch Rodeo Finals in Amarillo this fall. That's a fun one. I've sang at weddings. It's just kind of random. And I do have an album recorded. It's about 10 years old now. And people are like, when are you going to record again? And it's really hard to get away from the ranch and to record music.
Well, I'm sure with the vast following and viewership that we have, we could turn some really instant success your direction.
Yeah.
So
it's like depressing folk music, really. But yeah, and that's the last couple of years I was singing really hard, and that's really hard when you're working on the ranch. In our busy season, we're working 70, 80 hours a week on the ranch, and then I take a shower and go sing at night. And so I burn myself out pretty bad. So I'm singing less now, which has been good, and I'm focusing more.
So do you play with a band at all, or is it always just you?
Nope, it's just me solo. I just like don't have time to practice with the band. It'd be really fun, but I don't even practice. I just grab my guitar and go sing somewhere and come back home and ranch somewhere.
And are you well versed in a bunch of different instruments, or just guitar?
Just guitar. I once in a while like get a wild hair and try to play harmonica, or I purchased a hurdy-gurdy, which is this medieval instrument last year, and I have not spent enough time practicing with that. So it's really just guitar and vocals.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You haven't done a juice harp yet?
No.
So if you get into that, I'm sure we could find some people out there that would like
play some spoons.
Yeah, no. There you go. That was it. The jug and the wash tub. So.
Oh yeah, I've actually played with a guy who plays wash tub bass.
Oh really?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, what kind of cattle do you guys raise?
So historically, my family had Herefords. This was Hereford country way back in the day. So they had registered Herefords. This is well before my time. But when I was a child, we started putting Angus bulls over Hereford cows. So now we're totally black-hided. It's probably predominantly Angus, but we still have a little bit of that Hereford bloodline happening, and we have some Simmental cross too. So they're mostly black Angus, black-hided, but we have some white on their faces still. So we have some black baldies and subracal faces.
Cattle prices are up right now.
They are, thank goodness. With everything else that's going on, it's the saving grace right now.
What's the biggest challenge that you have where you're at now, and how things have morphed into things over the last 20 plus years?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think the biggest challenge is like trying to honestly just make a living, just to do well enough, which when cattle prices are good, we had good cattle prices in like 2014, 2015. And so those things really help. But COVID was really tough because, as everyone knows, prices for everything skyrocketed. All of our costs also skyrocketed, but cattle prices didn't. Right. There was this lag time there where we were just bleeding money. Fertilizer and feed and everything and diesel, everything went sky high. Cattle prices didn't. So we were just really off balance there. So it's been a relief to have cattle prices come up and catch up a little bit. So other challenges, there's drought has been a big challenge. It was a really dry summer for us. And then just a lot of it is a lot of mental challenges with, the things that we've been talking about, the ballot initiatives and things coming down the pipeline that we have to spend time dealing with or fighting. Wolf Reintroduction has been a huge time suck for us. And when you're hearing me talk about how much we're working, the commodity we don't have is time.
Right.
And the amount I wish I would have kept track. The amount of hours to go to meetings or learn about what we're going to be expecting with wolves, just the sheer amount of time spent has been unreal.
Even if you don't have them on your place, just the aura
Yeah.
of, where are they at, or what's the neighbor doing, or, what's CPW doing, or what's the Department of Ag doing, or what the politicians are doing. I mean, they're in the news all the time. That's got to be a burden just because you're an ag producer and you're in close proximity to where they originally released wolves.
Yes, and we've had them on our place. We have, let's see, I guess it was last fall, we had our goose hunter sent me a video first thing in the morning, 4 wolves going right across the meadow. I mean, right outside the house. We have had tracks. We've had collar pings on our place, right looking at our cows. I mean, and so they have been there. And and it is, as they sort of move away, you can breathe a sigh of relief a little bit, but it's always there. And the dreams that I have had of finding still alive but torn up cattle, I mean, the mental pressure is pretty extreme.
How close has it been to where anybody has had or suffered any loss on their properties to where your location is?
So one of our main summer pasture, which is again a private lease that's up north of us, last fall there were depredations directly across the fence within sight of our cattle. So everyone at this time of year is bringing cattle out of the high country, and so we gather to a smaller pasture to get ready to come down, and where we would normally stay in that pasture for a week. Last year we stayed in one night because
Really?
there were depredations happening across the fence, and I was trying to decide whether to camp with our cows that night. And I'm gonna get emotional talking about this, but I finally just broke down. I was so tired, and I was crying to our neighbor about it, trying to decide what to do, because it's this unknown thing that we're trying to learn how to deal with.
It's not only unknown, it's something that you're forced to deal with this, but you can't deal with it. I mean, you can't do anything about it. You can't act upon something unless something is caught in the act.
Yes.
In very seldom do we know that unless you're sitting there 24 hours a day, do you have the opportunity to be able to turn around and determine a legitimate caught in the act.
Yep. That's what we've discovered is here I'm talking about this, and we know we've had wolves on our place multiple times. We found the tracks, which that's been interesting too. We have a county road that runs through our place. So people will bring dogs and I'll look at tracks and be like, that's a pretty big dog track. But until you see a wolf track, you're like, oh, that's a whole, I mean, they're huge. I will not mistake it again.
But have you seen wolves yourself?
No, and that's what I was going to say is so many people I've talked to, here we have them coming around and they're so elusive, or if you're not out there at the exact time that they are, we haven't seen them, like many people haven't seen any yet. But here they are, in our cows and stuff. But
Have you heard them?
Yeah. Nope. Mm-mm.
Which is interesting because a lot of the proponents of the introduction of wolves have a hard time comprehending that when you live on the landscape all the time and you're there all the time, well, why don't you know this, or why don't you see this, or why can't you document that? The idea that they throw out that you should be able to turn around and walk on the back porch like where your poodle is before you let it out. There's nothing further from the truth the way this all plays out. Wolves, like lions and bears, aren't always visible. And even on the depredation side of the other big carnivores in the state, you don't always get a chance to see something in the act. And a lot of times you don't even know it's there until the act has already been done, or you see the tracks or the scat, or maybe you hear something. But that's one of the biggest things I've seen over the course of the last, 3 or 4 years. When I sat on the stakeholder advisory group for the wolf introduction and listening to people on the group talk about specific things, and I'm like, that's not how it works. It's not. You don't understand what you're talking about. What you want is not typically how things happen on a ranch. And I see this even in the wildlife control business that I'm in. People will have raccoons going in the back of their house underneath their soffit, or going up through some hole in the back of the foundation. They live there. They don't even know that it's there, and they're in the house of 1,800 square foot. You start talking about 1,800 acres or 18,000 acres or 180,000 acres. People that don't understand that have a hard time visualizing or comprehending it.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that we would likely find fairly soon, if we had like a depredation or something, during the times of year that our cattle are near the houses, because our hay meadows kind of surround our house. So if it's spring or winter, it's much more likely for us to find something. But even, I'm talking as one of the smaller producers, we're running on smaller properties with smaller amounts of cows. Unless you're finding something that is dead within the first 12 hours, it's getting cleaned up by scavengers. I will know where something was sick, and I sometimes can't find the carcass.
Yeah.
It is, we spend a lot of time riding with our cattle, a lot. And it's still like, I know that there was a sick calf that I doctored, last week. And, when we gathered her, she wasn't there. And we had 7 people riding in this one small pasture. We didn't see any sign. So it's hard for people to understand, I think, some of the challenges to, say, getting a confirmed depredation is, if you can know that you have wolves in the area, but if you can't find that carcass in time to confirm the depredation, you're not going to get, the compensation that everyone talks about as being such a big deal for us. And so there's all these challenges that, when you first hear about, you're like, oh, well, that makes sense. And one of the ones was the 10J rule, when they were getting ready to reintroduce wolves, and we needed that 10J ruling. And when I say the 10J ruling for, listeners who might not be as intimately involved with this as we are, that was the ruling that wolves are an experimental population. And so they, even though as a federally protected species, you could, shoot a wolf if you saw it chasing or attacking a cow. And so we're like, yeah, that sounds great. Well, the original version of the 10J was only during hunting hours, daylight hours. Wolves don't, they're hunting at night. So I have to really thank some of our Middle Park stock growers guys, because I think they took some commission members out and showed them things like thermals and explained this problem. And then that 10J ruling got added for the nighttime as well, which again, the odds of anyone actually seeing this happen are very low unless you're literally out there 24 hours a day.
You've got a perspective because you know people that are intimately involved in a lot of these processes, whether it's the Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Department of Ag, range riders, other ranchers or whatever. If you just looked at the entire program from your knowledgeable perspective, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst, what do you think overall the entire program is right now?
No, man. So 10 being the best, 1 being the worst? A 1. It's not going well. It's a shit show, if I can say that. And I don't
say anything you want on here. This is a podcast.
Well, and I say that with all respect to our CBW people. It's been so hard on them, and they haven't been able to speak out about it. We've had good people, go ahead and retire because this is just a nightmare for them, and good people quit and go into other industries because this is. I like never want to like out somebody, but one of the people I was talking to said, this is the worst thing that's happened in my career. And this is a career long CBW.
I think there's a lot of people that would feel that at this point in time.
Yeah. And and again, like people are working hard. There are people in CBW who are working hard to help us as ranchers.
Because you're friends a lot of the time. When you're in small communities, you went to school with these people, or your kids went to school, or you know each other. Maybe you married to people, or maybe you're part of each other's community.
Mm-hmm. And I've met wonderful people since Wolf Reintroduction. They've gotten hired in, some of these game damage specialist jobs and stuff. These are also good people who are trying to help us on the ground. But it's been interesting to see some of the non-lethal techniques too. And it's just the challenges. I see these, Facebook. You see all these comments on Facebook of, well, if you did this, or if you just do this, or if you just do this. But it was looking pretty seriously this spring, like what is called the 1 Ear Pack that is settled in North Park. They were spending a lot of time down in our area, and it was looking pretty seriously like they were going to den in our area. So we went ahead and said yes to doing flattery for our calving area. And that was a challenge. I thought I would have more time because it takes some maintenance to keep the flattery up. So flattery is electric fencing set at wolf height, which is interesting for us, who use electric fencing for cattle. It's lower, and it has these red flags on it. So it's supposed to spook wolves, and also if they touch it, get shocked. And we, again, are one of the smaller producers in our valley. And our area for our calving was really pushing it. They kept talking about how this is a big area for flattery. And we had a hard time keeping the flattery hot. I thought I'd have more time to work on it. And to their credit, there were CPW people who would come off of an all-night watch that they were trying to help somebody in North Park, and then they'd come down and work on our flattery. And I'm really glad we didn't have wolves in the area because they're having a hell of a time keeping it hot. And it was kind of a good trial run.
So how big of an area are you talking about for the flattery on your place?
So we have one meadow that we actually actively calve in. We have our heavies. We call our pregnant cows the heavies. And then we'll sort the pairs out as they calve. So it seemed crazy to me to only have flattery around the actively calving cows when you have, sometimes a 3-day-old baby calf. You don't want to have it outside that. So we went ahead and put flattery around all of our hay meadows, which is about 140 acres. And it didn't quite come around because our houses and corrals wind up there. So we had it planned out to where it went around most of that. And that's a big flattery build. And we are a small producer. So that's...
Did you have to pay for that?
No, CPW loaned us the equipment and brought all the people to put it up. They did all the work. So that was very helpful and nice. And it was also a little overwhelming because I'm used to working by myself or maybe with one other person.
So you got a bunch of people showing up there.
I think there was 11 people, which is...
just like a family reunion.
And at first I was like, oh God. They can tell you, I was like, I'm like stressing me out a little bit. But they were training people to put up flattery, which is great. Like people need to be trained for the areas. So I had to be like, okay, they're training people, it's okay. Because it's really like more of a 4-man job. But yeah, it was an interesting experience to get to do that. We've had flattery and fox lights, and we're making plans for carcass management, which is another big question that we had from the very get-go that it does not have a good answer. So there's all these things that sound like they might be tied up neatly, like, oh, you just do this and it's no problem and you'll be fine. But, I think it's more the luck of the draw of where wolves are going to set up shop or where their territories are going to be. And we're totally trying so hard to be proactive and be ready for this. We are working really hard at it. And that's when I mentioned that time is the amount of time that I've spent in meetings or learning about this. I have learned so much about wolves and wolf reintroduction. I still have never even seen a wolf.
And probably learned a lot about government that you didn't know.
Well, I think I told you before we started, very, very naively didn't even know that there was a CPW commission until this came about. And then I was part of the efforts with Middle Park stock growers to ask for the petition to pause, and went ahead and gave public comment for the Lamar meeting, and I had never experienced that either. So I don't know. I'm still so naive about all of the legislation and the things that you understand and know about. So
I don't even understand it. I'm just in the middle of it. You get to a point to where I think you become calloused to some of the lunacy in what people's perceptions are. And when you live and eat and breathe and sleep something, that when somebody comes and tells you you're wrong, no matter what it is, and I'm not a rancher, I'm not an ag producer, but I've been working around ranchers and ag producers all my life. I've got a lot of good friends that are in big operations. Some of them have sold and moved out of state, moved to Oklahoma, moved to North Dakota, moved to Wyoming. They saw the direction that Colorado was becoming, and the kicker is they were right in the middle of it. A lot of it was because of the urban-rural divide. That we'll talk about. Some of it was because of the renewable energy side of things, that they didn't want to turn around and raise their kids around windmills now that they see from their house and surround their entire property because they didn't want to get on board with that whole process. Some of it has to do with wolves. Some of it has to do with just the human dimension side of it, that they ran their operations on public allotments. And the amount of people that they have to deal with on a regular basis now is almost, they're like, to you, you don't want to be around people anymore, and you have to be around people. Although you're a pleasant person, you can talk to people, but you don't want 50 people showing up on your place unannounced just because they're going through to get to some other place. Whether it's public land or not, it's an infraction on you being able to turn around and manage your lifestyle and your cattle and your operation. And I don't think people understand, at least a lot of the people in the Front Range don't understand how troubling that is for somebody to be able to continually run an agricultural operation, whether it's private or public, either way.
I think, yeah, and talking about the rural-urban divide and just, I think people maybe having a different idea of ranching and like what we do and what it looks like. Some of the things that I think of a lot are how much we love our animals. I think that's a hard concept, especially for people who, might think, how can you love something and then turn around and eat it? And that's a topic that I think I try to explain well. I would love to have somebody asking questions, and be able to bounce this off of them. But we care. I am such an animal lover. I really am. I like almost get made fun of in my circles for this. Like, I don't like to do some things if I know it's gonna, bother animals, such as one of the practices that's pretty typical in ranching is burning ditches. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to, burn the mice out of their homes. I mean, that's the level of animal
Really?
love that I have for just all animals. And so we're raising these cattle and they have these beautiful, idyllic lives. And they run up on these beautiful pastures. We take care of them. We feed them in the winter. They're having these good lives. And so our hope for them is that they have one bad moment and a good death. And I talk about a good death to people a lot. And I think that can be, I think those of us who see life and death a lot, it's such a part of our everyday life in ranching. You're right on the edge of the wild and you see life and death every day. But if you're living in an urban environment, you might not see that as much as we do. And so I talk about a good death as being like a fast death, not, getting torn apart by something or being still alive when you're getting eaten by a predator. A good death to me is something that a beef cow would experience. So a really good life and a good death.
Well, and that's what you and I come from a different cloth in the sense to where we accept the fact that it's our duty to be stewards of things and also benefit off of it. Other people that we deal with don't want us to be stewards of it unless it's going to live in harmony for the rest of its dying days, and we don't have anything to do with that dying days.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that people don't think about a lot. And that's an argument in favor of hunting as well. That's also what I would consider a good death. Animals that are dying of old age and starvation out in the wild or getting, predated upon by something else, that's a harsh reality. And these are not, dying in a hospital bed deaths, It's a harsh reality of wildlife and all life. So I in trying to explain how much we love our animals, yes, they're ultimately a food animal. It's a beef animal. But I also see it as an honoring. Like they're nourishing us, and it's an honoring and it's a give and take. And I look at our cow herd, and my mom can talk about our cow families back to the 70s. We can keep track of our matriarchal lines of cows. It's a matriarchal line, and we know who is the grandmother and the mother, and they have friends. Our cows have friends with each other, and we try to make sure that the cow friends go to the same pasture. I mean, it's this stewarding of livestock where it's almost we're in teamwork with each other. Our cows know us. If other people come through them, they get kind of alarmed. They know us specifically. Sometimes they'll get alarmed if I come through and they haven't seen me and I say, "Hey girls," and they look at me and they're like, "Oh, it's our person that we see every single day in the winter when she's feeding us." And so I think that can be hard for people to understand that if you're in a more urban environment. But I also went to school at CU Boulder, which is, Boulder's known as a very, it's kind of the quintessential Front Range place that you think of. And I would talk to people about our cattle. And I had some people, I was at that point selling beef technically illegally, when it's not for resale, USDA inspected beef, I would bring beef of ours down to Boulder. And there were people who were like, I won't eat red meat, but I will eat your beef because I know where it's been and I know how you talk about your cattle. And that's the relationship that I want people to understand. And like, if you can afford to buy beef from a local person, please do that, because then you know where your food is. And like, and I think it's so important to support local foods and know where your food is coming from. And so that's one thing that I like to have people understand. And another is how important, and you've talked about this on your podcast a lot, our private ranch lands are for wildlife. They are havens for wildlife. And public lands in Colorado are amazing. I love that we have our public lands, but the public is there. And that is a lot of pressure on wildlife. And I don't think people even know it. Like you've said before, you're not intentionally harassing wildlife. But
Just you being there.
yeah,
You know, I mean,
being out on the
and
trails.
that's not to keep anybody off public land, because
Absolutely not.
mountain bikers or motocross riders or hang gliders or Boy Scout campers or whatever. But you can love something to death and not know that you're hurting it because you don't see the aftermath. You don't see the effects of when you're gone. Most people that utilize that space are there for a day or 2 or 3 or 5, or maybe they go back multiple times through the summer, but they're not camped in one spot. And they don't see the wildlife that is disrupted, or if there's fire, or if there's trash, or if there's just noise. They don't see that.
And I'm the same way as you. I'm so glad the public loves public lands. But I also hope people understand that being supportive of ranchers so that we continue ranching and holding these vast landscapes open for wildlife is very important. Because if ranchers sell out, what's likely to happen to our ranch lands? Development, right? Colorado is getting developed so hard.
Unless you have the idea like the guy in Grand Junction that turned around and said that we need to create eminent domain.
Oh,
We need to turn around and kick everybody off and then get all the wilderness and not let anybody in there, and we just make everything a wolf sanctuary. Those are the lunatics that I would consider, that have no idea about you, no idea about ranching, no idea about land stewardship, but they have this grandiose idea in their head about how they want everything to be, and it has nothing to do with the people and the process and the management of that landscape and the natural resources.
absolutely. And I think that there's this idea that like we're doing a bad job for wildlife. But wildlife comes to these ranches, the habitat that we're working on and stewarding, wildlife desires it.
Yep.
We have, you're talking about people not knowing they have raccoons in their house. I have a ranch house that was originally built in the late 1800s. You can see the generations of people who've tried to keep wildlife out from under it with like all the different layers of chicken wire that's been dug through. We have foxes that have kits under my house, and then they usually move them to a log shed. We have a red tail nest in my backyard. It's literally like in my yard. We have an osprey nest, which CPW put the pole up for us because the ospreys were trying to build on an archway. We have osprey that raise babies every year. We have an irrigation reservoir on our place that is so renowned for birding that people come and sit on the county road and look at the nesting birds that we have on our lake. And we have deer and elk and lions and bears. We have so many species on our small ranch. It's teeming with wildlife. And I love seeing all these wildlife getting raised right alongside us raising our livestock. It's all in tandem, and it's all happening in a nice way. It's not this evil, like us against nature thing that I think sometimes people assume ranching is sort of anti-wildlife, but it's not. We are alongside.
No, the perception is that you want everything off of the property.
Yes.
And that you don't want to live with it. You cannot coexist. You don't believe in their terms of the ecosystem and biodiversity, because you're a bunch of knuckle-dragging, cattle-raising Neanderthals that your job is to turn around and put stuff on people's plates. That's all they vision. And I think that, and there's good people on the opposite side of the aisle as well, that understand. But a lot of the ones that are really, really far left wing, that they can't see the middle of the road, they can't see the far right side of the road, they can't see the consumptive use side of the road. They really have a hard time comprehending how all of this works hand in hand.
I think that's true, and that's unfortunate to have to be fighting these things against these people who bring these ballot initiatives forward and stuff. I hope what I see everywhere I go is good people. There's so many good people. And if we can just educate each other on stuff. We have one of our grass leases is owned by a family who owns this beautiful property. It's been in their family a long time, but they predominantly live in Denver. And we talked about Proposition 127 last year, and they said, tell us about what we should know about on the ballot. And we talked about, the mountain lion hunting ban, and we talked about the slaughterhouse ban in Denver. And they listened to us on that and went and talked to their neighbors. And I so appreciate that. I mean, there are so many reasonable, good people, and if they can understand better what our lives are like, I hope that we can have dialogue and talk about these things and educate each other and on things that affect, when we talk about the rural-urban divide and having, not an understanding of what life is really like up here in the mountains in the West Slope. But if we can talk to each other and convince each other and learn from each other, that's wonderful. And thank you for having this dialogue so that people can learn.
Well, and that's the biggest thing, trying to get people to understand the holistic and organic side of wildlife management and natural resource management plays into the public and the private land side both. You've got the water, you've got the land, you've got the air, you've got the wildlife, you've got all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to ask you, what is your definition from somebody that lives on the rural side? What's the definition of urban-rural divide?
I think, to me, the definition of urban-rural divide is just a lack of understanding of what life is like for each other. And as somebody who, crossed the urban-rural divide and went to school in Boulder, and
Because you went to the dark side. Temporarily.
which I love Boulder, what a fun place to live and go to school. But it was really interesting to be down there and be in school, for ecology. I had a public lands class. And that was a great class. I wish I could remember the professor's name. We talked about all kinds of things. One of the things that came up was, the overabundance of elk in Estes Park in Rocky Mountain National Park. Immediately, wolf reintroduction gets brought up. And most of the people in the class, from urban environments were like, oh, that's a great idea. Why are we talking about, trying to give elk birth control when we could just bring in their natural predator? And I was like, I am from that county, and Rocky Mountain National Park is actually very small compared to a predator's range. And so these wolves are going to be out of the park immediately. And everyone in the class was like, oh, we did not think of that, And so the perspectives that are I saw that firsthand. And again, not bad people, just not thinking about all the nuances and all of the complications in all of these decisions. So another example is, I think I was talking to you about this earlier on the phone, is I was a Betcher scholar, so I still go to Betcher alumni events. And I think probably everyone who listens to your podcast is Coloradans, but if you're not, the Betcher Foundation is this great foundation in the state, and they give full ride scholarships to, I think when I was in school, it was 40 kids a year. I think there's more now. But so I had a full ride scholarship to any school in the state. So I still go to alumni events. These are awesome people. These are movers and shakers and smart, interesting people. And they put on a panel at that event on the rural-urban divide. So I went to that panel and was excited. Everyone who was there was rural. So I feel like it's one of these things that's actually kind of
Everybody on the panel was rural.
who had chose to attend that panel. I shouldn't say everybody. Everybody I talked to turned out to be rural.
But you didn't have a great big urban-rural divide that was there for the urban-rural divide.
So I'm probably not doing a good job explaining this. I can't remember how many people were there. It was more like it occurred to me that the people who recognize that the urban-rural divide is a problem are mostly rural people.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh. And so that sparked actually a lot of great conversations amongst, all the Betcher people of wait, here's a problem. We're trying to offer this panel, but the only people who are interested in the panel are the rural people. So just starting these conversations to even have people realize that is an issue, and amongst rural and urban people. So I've gotten way off in the weeds on very similar question.
But it goes along with the question and the perception, because you run into people either on neighboring properties or on the forest or whatever that they probably have a different perspective of you and who you are and where you come from and what your background is. So do you think that it's complete ignorance on people that don't understand the rural lifestyle? Or do you think it's just that they're that much against it because it's so foreign to them?
I think there's probably some of both. My hope is that for the most part, it's just kind of a general ignorance. I think as humans, we have this desire to like categorize things. I think about this a lot with my, background in ecology. We're just obsessed with animal classification and taxonomy, like how does this fit in here when it's really a continuum. So, me as a rancher, people might be like that she's probably like super right wing, and I might not fit their boxes. I am, a college educated, moderate person. I have different beliefs, and we all look at each other and make assumptions right away. And I think it's important for people to remember that you just need to have dialogue and learn that we're not all fitting in these boxes. And sure, there are people who are anti-agriculture. I think a lot of the time those opinions were formed based on thoughts of ranching that aren't true. And maybe you'll never change some of those people's minds. But
And I want to emphasize too, you don't hunt yourself.
no, I'm like pretty ignorant about it.
Yeah.
My dad hunted and he quit hunting. So I never, had a person to teach me how to hunt.
So you've got your own perspective, but for somebody who's going to categorize you and throw you into this box over here, that you don't do what they assume that a lot of people that live on the rural landscape do.
Yeah. I'm guilty of it too. I categorize people. I think we all are guilty of it. And I think in this current political climate that is so polarized and so angry, it's so important to remember that we are all, not all, I'm sure there are, pockets of evil, but we are mostly good people and we can learn from each other and get different perspectives. I've had my mind changed by people who speak kindly and intelligently about a topic and not just, you're stupid, And I just
hang around me for a little bit. You'll find out that they might talk to you that way. They don't talk to me that way.
But yeah, I think I worry about that. I think sometimes a lot of, my mom and I are both college educated. I think there's a lot of ranch families that aren't classically, like they didn't go to a university.
Right.
These are really smart people. My dad could have been an engineer. These people can build anything. But I think sometimes there is, I just see both sides calling the other one dumb when they get frustrated, and we should all remember we're intelligent people. But I'm getting
don't until you walk a mile in my shoes, don't judge how my shoes fit.
Absolutely.
And I think that the people that we have to deal with on a regular basis have a predetermined perception or an opinion about something because they saw somebody, one person, on a newsreel or on a Facebook post or at a meeting, and that's how they turn around and coin everybody in the same bunch. But it happens on our side too. The guy that I mentioned about, the eminent domain deal, not everybody believes in that, whether they're on his side of the fence or our side of the fence. But I think there's a certain amount of the population that are drifters, and whatever they decide to follow is whatever resonates with them and their core beliefs. Let me ask you, when you go to Denver for whatever,
mostly to get on airplanes.
Yeah, I was going to say you try not to as much as it. But when you go to Denver, do you just wonder, because I've done this during the 127 campaign, how the hell do you convince, just because of the numbers, how do you convince them to accept your way of life when you turn around and talk to them? Or do you just let it kind of, it's brushed off your shoulder and you just turn around and say, this is what I do and this is how I do it?
The only way I know how is open dialogue. And it's small, it's this grassroots, what I'm talking about with these friends of ours in Denver who we talk about, and then they tell their friends and then they start talking, and you just kind of breaking down those perceptions. That's how I think of it. But yes, I get frustrated in Denver because we're up here, we're not used to being around this many people. Right. It's hard to deal with the traffic and stuff. But that's the only way I know how. But I think you're probably way deeper into this than I am, because I think the message got out for 127 of wait a second, I think people saw how wolf reintroduction is going and are like, whoa, wait a second. Maybe we didn't see maybe we didn't understand all the nuances of what this was.
Maybe everything wasn't laid out appropriately beforehand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Which I think many of us are forever regretful for sleeping on that because.
Well, everybody thought it wasn't going to happen.
Yes.
They didn't think it was going to pass.
Yep. So if we're going to talk about positives from wolf reintroduction, I think it's maybe awakening people to, maybe we shouldn't be voting. Maybe we shouldn't have wildlife things on the ballot. Maybe that's not up to the public to decide. For me personally, this is just a random aside. One of the positives for wolf reintroduction is I, as a non-hunter, had never used game cameras before. So we got some game cameras to try to watch for if we had wolf movement. And I'm having so much fun with those, both for seeing wildlife and also for seeing where our cows are going and how they're behaving. Because I'm up in the mountains at certain times, I'm there, I'm interacting with them. To see what they're doing when we're not there is really fun.
Have you seen stuff on the game cameras that you didn't know was there?
Yes. I mean, and here we were talking about this earlier, of seeing, have we ever seen a wolf?
Mm-hmm.
I have been riding in these mountains horseback my entire life. I have seen one mountain lion. These are elusive animals, you just don't see them. And a lot of times I have dogs with me because we have our working dogs. But it's fun to see a pine marten. I've never seen a pine marten, and I got a picture of that, So things that I don't think about all the time. And that's been really fun to see. And this is right in our pastures. I would just like to say that too. If people think that cattle are negatively impacting wildlife, being on the same landscapes, I have the cameras in our pastures because I want to see if wolves are coming into the cattle. And you'll see, and I've seen this in person too. Wildlife is generally less scared of you if you're on a horse.
Right.
They don't recognize that you're a person. I've been in the rut in September a couple years ago, looking at our cattle, and they're interspersed with elk all through them. It's just cattle and elk together. And these bulls are bugling and keeping their little harems of cows together. I had a bull crash out of the trees because he thought I was another bull. My horse was winning, which I would think they would not think was a bugle, but it was magical. And they're just in together, and they're just living together. It's as though the cattle are part of the wildlife. So that's another thing I would like to get that message out. It's not like cattle are pushing wildlife off the land. Even horseback, they don't mind you being there. And it's just, it's this coexisting that works really well and has been working for a long time.
On the game cameras, give us a list of some of the wildlife that you've seen.
Moose, cow and calf moose, deer, lots of bucks, lots of elk, pine martens, skunks, raccoons, bears, lots of bears, mountain lion, I might have already said that, bobcat, coyotes, foxes.
And still never a wolf.
Not a wolf, yeah.
No.
Yeah, which has been nice for me.
It might help you sleep a little bit better, but as soon as you get one on there, that image is going to be ingrained in your head to the point to where now you know for sure. And maybe it happens this winter, maybe it happens next spring, maybe it doesn't happen for another 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I can only imagine what you've had to see so far through the introduction and your reservations about all of that and how it's been laid out. If you see something on there, what is your first inclination that you're going to do when you see it? Do you call a game warden? Do you let them know? Do you say, "Hey, did you know this was here?" Or what do you think? What do you think the protocol would be?
I think, let's see. Likely I would get a picture at night, and I have my phone on Do Not Disturb, so I'm not getting. Also, if a cow decides to lay down in front of a camera, you're going to get 400 pictures in an hour. So I learned right away that I need to take the sound notification off of my Reveal app because these are cell game cameras. So I think my first inclination is going to be to call all my neighbors. We have kind of we even have a text thread amongst all of us in the area. We know the one-ear pack comes down where we assume we're going to be part of their territory. They've already made a foray down right next to us this fall. We do get texts every day about caller activity in our area. And so I think I'm going to, first and foremost, let the neighbors know, and then get up there as quickly as possible and make sure that things are looking good. So that's my plan. And I actually got asked that question by a CPW person. And it was in the context of, do you think this is going to help you to have these cameras, or is it just going to upset you? And this goes back to a conversation that I've been having with CPW of, we talk about transparency and the lack of transparency. I think some of that is trying to save us from getting upset.
Right.
But what I told him is, any information is better than none. The fear of the unknown is so insidious and gets with you. If I have a picture of a wolf on camera at 2 a.m. and I wake up to that, that's information, and that's empowering and strengthening, and I can go up there and see and if stuff is okay. Because he was concerned. He's like, isn't that going to be upsetting for you or like wind you up? And I'm like, this is already like happening. It's already upsetting.
You'd like to know.
I want to know. Information is helpful. The more information I have, the calmer I am about this. The more we've learned, the better. That's part of what goes into the learning about it, is just the fear of the unknown is pretty intense. And this is unknown for us. Any animal, human, I'm counting us as animals, humans and animals. Wolves are new for us. No animal or human alive in Colorado. Yes, wolves used to be in Colorado, but this is, by all intents and purposes, a new species for the rest of us. The deer, elk, we're like, we haven't seen this. So any information is helpful. And that's where that transparency, I think, is so important. And it would be, I would hope for more trust back and forth. I think there's been worry, with the sharing of the collar data of, what might these ranchers do if they know where the wolves are. But it's hard for us to trust if we're not getting trust in return. And so, and I'm not saying this is like against CPW as a whole, but I think there's people within CPW who are worried about like what ranchers would do with the knowledge of where wolves are. But the thing with the collars is they're uploading on a delay anyway.
Right.
So the data we get is in the past. It's where wolves were. It's pretty rare that you're getting where wolves are. So
Yeah, the only time you're probably going to get it close is if there is a depredation and there's something coming back to either feed on that carcass, or if it just found it was an easy meal and it's going to go back and get something else.
Yep.
To where it's more reoccurring.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had discussions with your neighbors or people in town that have kind of either created maybe some reservations on you about what people would do if they had wolves on their property? Or are you pretty much all lockstep with everybody's planning on doing the same thing?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, I mean, if you
would we all do different things?
Yeah, I mean, you go into town. Bob says that he saw or heard a wolf, or they got something on a game camera. Is that easily distributed information around, and everybody pretty much has an idea, or has that even happened yet?
I am not as like in the loop as
You're not a
some people
socialite, are you?
are. Well, like there's some of the old guys go to breakfast every morning, together. I'm not part of that. So I'm probably out of the loop on a lot of this. I'm not as much in, we all have our own little communities within communities.
Right.
So I really couldn't answer that. I think for the most part, though, what are you going to do? You're going to go check on your cows and see what's going on, and I don't think that there's like going to be anybody taking extreme measures, but we do have the ability with the 10J ruling, I think any of us, if we had the opportunity, if we saw a wolf attacking our animal and we happened to have a gun, which for me is not always the case. I'm not, I'm probably less prepared in many ways than a lot of our neighbors for this, because I just don't. I usually am carrying a rifle, but it's a dart gun. It's how I doctor cattle. I could shoot a wolf with a dart of antibiotics. But yeah.
Make sure it's healthy.
Yeah.
What sort of interaction have you had with CPW as this has transpired over the course of the last 18 or 20 months? You say the whole deal has been a 1 on a scale of 1 to 10, but from the CPW side of things, the boots on the ground guys.
Yeah. Which maybe that is harsh of me to say. That's
Yeah, but you're living it.
Well, just looking at it overall, it's hard on. I mean, I don't think that I can't think of any group of humans or animals that this has been positive for so far, and that includes the wolves. This has been really hard on them. I mean, how many wolves would come here just to die? and they're taken from their families and everything they've ever known and checked out on a landscape they've never seen. And how many of those wolves have died? I'm like losing track at this point. Like, so that's why I give it the 1, and that is not, and I know people have worked really hard on this and spent much time. So they might say, that was really harsh, Caitlyn, to give that a 1. But I just see the stress that this is putting on our local boots on the ground CBW people. I mean, they have this whole other job that they're supposed to be doing with managing all these wildlife species, checking hunter tags, checking fishing tags, keeping track of, the biologists are supposed to be looking at sage grouse and deer and all these, and everyone's jaws has gotten hyper-focused down to
Well,
wolves.
listen to a commission meeting. Historically, the last 18 months, 60% of all the conversation that goes on in some way, shape, or form has to do with wolves.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's 961 species of wildlife in 42 state parks and, 1,100 employees with 1,000 temporary employees and, 84 million visitors and 6 million residents in the state of Colorado. There's a lot more out there than just wolves.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you look at the news and if you look at the social media side and you look at the legislative side or the management side, you would think that a lot of this state just has wolves. That's all they have because that's all they talk about.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be frustrating because I know people that are living in areas that don't have wolves there and likely won't have wolves for quite some time, but they know people in areas that wolves have frequented
Mm-hmm.
or that they've decided to hang out. It's pissing those guys off, and they don't even have to worry about wolves. It's just the stress or the action or lack thereof that their friends or their families have to deal with.
Yeah.
I know people that turn around and take stuff from summer pasture in the high country and put it down in the low country for winter pasture. They're reluctant to figure out where they're going to go back for the summer pasture again because wolves become more and more prominent.
Mm-hmm.
The average person that wants wolves doesn't understand the intricacies of the wildlife interaction with agriculture production and how that intertwines or cross-pollinates to a point. They just don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying that some people that we often talk about or hear at every single meeting doesn't have an idea, but the general public doesn't understand how complicated this is. And I think that if they had a chance to see it from your eyes or from Gittleson's eyes, they would have a different perspective.
And that is exactly the conversations I hope to have to avoid things like this in the future. And, just the hyper focus for all these CPW people, it's been really rough. And if wolf reintroduction was a good idea, CPW would have done it, And there's a reason
Exactly.
that wolves weren't introduced. And we've talked about this and people are saying, oh, you're just anti-wolf or whatever. But there are 6 million people in this state. This is a different animal than other states that have wolves. And we talked about this before the reintroduction happened. I talked to some media people about this. This is a different state. And also, because of the way the ballot initiative wording was, these wolves aren't getting dumped out in the most remote areas of Colorado and wilderness. They're getting released on state grounds. Guess what state grounds are right next to? Ranches. I mean, wolves are not being released in very far out remote areas. They're getting released right next to ranch lands and people, and they're smart, adaptable animals. You talked about this on some of your other podcasts. They're adapting right away to getting used to being around people.
And some of them are sticking around.
Yep.
They're not going off to the wild blue yonder.
Mm-hmm.
They're sticking pretty close to where they were dumped, and that's become more troublesome to the people that have to live there because they thought they were going to go somewhere else too.
Yes. And that is another conversation that, people are like, why are you making such a big deal about wolves when there's all these other predator species? And the answer is yes, I don't worry about bears and lions. I have them all over my cameras, but we can manage them. We can scare them. And, I'm a non-hunter. I have been along on a lion hunt where a lion was treed by hounds, and then we let the lion go. So I've seen it. I've seen what a lion hunt looks like. I have no desire to shoot a mountain lion. I will never shoot a mountain lion probably unless it's, eating my dog on my porch. But I so appreciate what hunting pressure does for keeping that respect between predator and humans. It's dangerous for wildlife when they start getting accustomed to being around humans. I mean, we hear it all the time, like a fed fox is a dead fox. You don't want wildlife being used to being around humans. I really appreciate what hound hunting pressure does to keep mountain lions up high and elusive and not wanting to come around, because and that's what is a shame about wolves is, and that is luckily one of the things we can do is haze wolves. But I haven't gotten the opportunity, and by gotten the opportunity, I mean I'm so glad I haven't had to haze wolves, but that is a thing that we are able to do. And we have proactively gotten what's called an injurious hazing permit, which means that if we did have wolves coming in really close, we could go ahead and like shoot them with rubber buckshot or a paintball gun or something. It's injurious because it will hurt them, but not injure them actually, But that's
How difficult was that to get?
it was not difficult at all.
No.
Nope. I called our AWM, area wildlife manager. I think I told our DWM at the time, I was like, we would like to have this just in case. And they're like, cool. Signed, here it is. They brought out the buckshot for us. I did have to buy a shotgun. I didn't own a shotgun, but and we haven't had the opportunity to use that. And it becomes pretty clear that if you ever were close enough to a wolf to need to haze it with these tools, that you're having a real problem already.
Right.
Because if wolves are coming in that close, they're probably causing damage. But I mean, there are these tools in the toolbox that we have, but again, these are really smart animals. They figure out right away how far the range is that you can, do things to them within. So that's where I think the hunting truly is important for keeping predator species respectful of humans, that we respect each other.
You've had some personal knowledge of the range riding program.
Mm-hmm.
You tell as much or as little as what you want, but do you think that that's been handled appropriately?
I mean, there was a reason that we put forward the petition to pause, and that was because these programs were not in place yet. So the range riding program, was kind of a scramble, and again, really good people working on it, really knowledgeable people getting range riders hired, and there's so much complication and nuance to that too, because there are CPW range riders. Stock growers can hire and fund their own range rider. There's all these different entities that have range riding funding. And so you might talk about a range rider being either a contract with CPW or, hired through individual stock growers. Private entities can hire their own range riders. So there's a lot of complication there. What it comes down to for us, that is an interesting thing, is that because we are running on private ground, we have to, make sure whoever is coming on to us is a known person that has permission to enter these people's private property. So it's the range riding program is not just like, you're not going to be like, hey, random person, go up there. And that is another frustrating thing about it, because who's qualified to range ride is us. We know the cattle, we know the country. It takes years to learn some of the ins and outs of these big, wild.
Yeah, and you're talking about your place as a smaller operation.
Yes.
Some of these places that I've worked on, I mean, they might be 30, 40, 50, 60,000 acres,
Yep.
100,000 acres. That's hard for people to comprehend,
Mm-hmm.
that when they say, well, you just put Flattery up. I'm like, the guy's he's got 1,900 miles of fence.
Yep.
Because you got cross fences and subsections and perimeter fences. And maybe this piece of property is separate from that piece of property. And there might be somebody else's property in between, or it might be public in between. The perception of people is you just do this.
Yep.
Just like what you were saying on the social media side. Just do this and it'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. And that's, oh man, social media. You see some comments that you really realize people don't know. Because I saw some early comments. This is before Introduction. It was when Gittlesons were having trouble in Walden with, the North Park Pack that came in naturally. And some of the Facebook comments were, well, why don't you just fence your cattle in? And I was like, oh no. We do. Cattle are fenced. Wildlife goes through fences. Yeah. That doesn't mean anything. And Flattery is only for small, close to home. This is like calving seasons or maybe winter pasture having trouble. Flattery is not for permits. It's not for summer pasture. Another thing that we have available is USDA, I mean, you could do this privately, but USDA has a program where they'll place livestock guardian dogs with ranchers. And we looked into that. And because we have our home place and then we split our cattle into 5 groups, some of them are across a highway, some of them are in a guest ranch. And it became immediately clear that livestock guardian dogs would not work for us, because as we're talking to them, they're like, oh yeah, the dogs will try to find all their cattle that they're used to. We'd have dogs crossing tons of private property, crossing the highway, maybe getting in trouble with the public. And here's another animal that I will love that could get hurt or killed by wolves. And I just can't. That was not an option for us. So,
So
there's,
have you looked at, personally, have you looked at if you had to do this stuff on your own? I mean, it's an expensive venture and operation for you to do what you're doing already.
mm-hmm.
To cover your ass, if you had to do flattery, if you had to do the livestock protection dogs, if you had to do the range riders, if you had to do the fox lights, how much cost would that be for your small operation compared to the bottom line that you have now, and expectant you to have to turn around and feel the brunt of all those expenses?
I mean, prohibitively expensive. We're talking thousands of.
You couldn't do it.
No. And that's what I worry about too, is then people would say, oh, well, you don't have to do it though. There's funding. But will there always be? We had one of our early meetings that I sat in via Zoom on wolf, the situation with wolves. They brought in people from Oregon. And one of the ranchers says, the money will run out. The money runs out. It just does. And then you're on your own. And, right now, yes, we have great support. We can borrow flattery, we can borrow fox lights. CPW literally brings it to you. They've been great about that. But, with some of the, what if something bad happens with CPW? What if something...
How long can it last?
Yeah. And right now, another NRCS has also partnered on some of this. And so there's funding that we applied for and got through NRCS that I don't know if this is a good idea, because we still don't know if it works all that well. Hopefully we'll learn. But we have funding that we will be buying our own flattery so that we can use it in the future. And then
a grant?
Yeah, I'm not going to, I shouldn't have brought this up probably, because I'm not going to speak intelligently about it. It happened really fast. It was a partnership with NRCS and Western Landowners Alliance, and I think CPW helped too. And they got some money together that was available for those of us. They have them in zones, set for zones of wolf reintroduction, of who's prioritized. So we were in the priority zones. So we got money for flattery and to help us with carcass management, so that we're not having open carcasses, that we can, if we have to pay to have somebody deal with our carcasses for us. And then we got money for range riding. And what that turns out for us is, because we can't, have random range riders. So I am taking a step back from my music and writing more myself, and using some of that range riding money to fund that, because we literally cannot do it. And I can't afford to take a step back from music without that. So I am now going, and the thing is, I kind of joke about range riding. I'm calling it range riding, AKA checking your cows, because as a rancher, that's literally what it is. You're up looking for health and stuff like that.
What's a timeline for a range rider, for somebody that doesn't know? They've heard these cliche terms or seen a snippet in the newspaper or something. A range rider is, he's still forced to deal with hours of operation. It's not like he's out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Yeah.
He sets his time based upon the particular piece of property or the livestock production that's going on there. Do they go from 6 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon, or?
From what I have seen, and again, I'm not I haven't been involved that closely, but it looks like to me, first of all, I think none of us really knew what range riding was going to look like, because again, range riding for yourself is checking your cows.
Right.
That's what it is. But when you have a contract range rider coming in to help you, they have to learn your landscape, first of all, and learn your cattle. And they come in with all their own equipment. For the CPW contracted range riders, they are provided no equipment. That is all their own stuff. That is all their own. Four-wheelers, thermals, if they're going to be
Horses,
doing night
trucks,
watch.
trailers,
Yep.
it's all
It's
them.
all
Show up
theirs.
for whatever the hell the nominal fee is.
Yep. I mean, it's not bad pay, but by the time you were looking at wear and tear on vehicles and equipment and time and sleeping in a bedroll in the back of your truck, or, pounding around what was interesting to me is from what I saw, this is very small part of the range riding in the state, but it turned out horses, what I expected to be mostly a horseback job, it's more of a four-wheeler job, because you cannot cover enough miles horseback to be looking through these huge areas where wolves are roaming and trying to keep track of what's going on. So it looked to me like it was mostly a four-wheeler or buggy job. And again, it's all, there's range riders with USDA too. USDA has provided range riders. So this is, it's so complicated, and people.
But there again, it goes into the expense.
Yes.
Talking from the guy from Oregon, that if the money's going to dry up, that means all of that dries up.
Yeah.
And then it's reliant on the individual landowners or producers themselves to be able to turn around and do that. If you have a problem, you can call somebody and you can pay them. But typically that's for a 1 or 2 time occurrence. They come out and fix the tractor. They come out and get rid of a beaver in a dam, in an irrigation ditch. They come out and roof your house. They're not there over and over and over and over if the population of wolves gets to a point to where now you just happen to be at the center of attention, as opposed to a pass-through. I'm concerned about 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road, that if the population continues to grow, the way that the plan has been implemented so far, and maybe it'll get better, but the way the plan has been implemented so far has not been something that gives me an all warm and fuzzy feeling that it's all going to be just good as gold as things continually move forward.
Absolutely. I started smiling when you said 5 or 10 years, because what I forgot to mention is with this NRCS money that we have for carcass management, rain riding, and flattery, that's for 5 years. We'll get through 5 years and see what happens, but what happens after 5 years? And the guy in Oregon was talking about compensation money. He's like, sure, they'll pay to start with, but that money runs out. So anyway, we're all gonna see together.
Do you know of, or do you think that on the grand scheme of things, property values have or could drop because of a growing wolf population? Now, this is speculation, but if you ran a hunting operation, if you run a calving operation, or whatever it is, and all of a sudden 50 wolves decided to stay here in the Kremlin area, in the Blue Valley area, Blue River, is it going to affect your property values?
Honestly, I don't see property values dropping, because somebody will happily come in and pave over it and put 50 houses there, which will be great for all the wildlife. I say that sarcastically, obviously, but I don't.
There's always somebody willing to turn around and take it and turn it up.
That's my fear, is that if we get so wrung out and exhausted on these family ranches that we decide not to do this anymore, what happens to this land? And I just, I hope that people would be willing to maybe throw some support our way to say, you're doing important work and you're keeping these landscapes open. I will buy your beef. I will stop voting, for things that make your life struggles, because what's going to happen to this property if it does? So, value in the sense of a ranch property, I'm sure it would drop. But I think with looking at Colorado landscape and real estate, I'm sure there will be somebody who will be happy to pave over this.
Yeah.
If you want to support a company that supported the efforts to defeat Proposition 127, then you need to support Davis Tent. Davis Tent has provided quality canvas goods for outdoorsmen for the last 50-plus years. For more information, go to davistent.com. If you want to support another business that was instrumental in helping us defeat Proposition 127, check out Salida Gun Shop. Salida Gun Shop in Salida, Colorado provides quality products, expertise, and knowledge from individuals that actually do what they sell. Go to salidagunshop.com. Listen to the advice of Cameron Haynes and support companies that are supporting your cause and your efforts. Minturn Anglers is one of those companies. Minturn Anglers provides product and fishing excursions in Colorado and are second to none. For more information, go to minturnanglers.com.
So you've heard about Initiative 98,
Yes, I have.
the Biodiversity Protection Act, which will essentially, if something like that was to come on and get on the ballot for people to turn around and vote on, it would degrade, erode, defund the Colorado Parks and Wildlife to the point to where it wouldn't be there. Give us your perspective of a layman's perspective. You're up here dealing with what you deal with. For somebody to sit down and think that they need to create a piece of, well, it's initially a legislative effort because it goes through legislative council and the title board. But if they were to actually get something like that on the ballot, how the hell would the ag community and the sportsman community fight that sensibly when you read a title that people are going to vote on about the Ecosystem and Biodiversity Protection Act? You went to CU Boulder.
Yeah.
These people are out of Boulder.
Mm-hmm.
How the hell do you combat that?
Well, honestly, I think what you've been doing and like what you did for 127, I don't know how else to do it other than get the message out of what this really means. Because it sounds good, and I keep bringing up wolves. I'm sorry about that, but it's such a big part of our life. But
It is. Well, just like what we said, it's in the news every day.
yeah, my mom brought up, she was like, if I were sitting in an apartment in Denver, I think I would have voted yes. Like if you don't understand this, it sounds good.
Yep.
It sounds good to people. So I think I don't know how to get this message out in a better way than what you have done, but to have these conversations and, talk to your neighbors, talk to people. Here's an example. I think last year there was, I'm never going to remember the numbers of this, but it was for a new veterinary position to get created in Colorado, which would allow somebody with not that much veterinary training to like perform surgeries and stuff. I'm like, this seems bad. Seems like it could be good. I don't really know. I'm not in the profession. I talked to vets. I called my vet. I talked to everybody I knew who's a veterinarian, and they all said this is a bad idea. So I voted no. Like that's part of, I think, educating yourself as a voter is not just reading what there is to read, but talking to the people who it actually affects and who actually are experts in whatever the vote is on. So, and unfortunately that passed, but when it comes back to the mountain lion stuff, to get the message out of what that really means. And the ballot, is it 98?
It's 98 now. It was 52, then 82, and now 98. And it hasn't gotten on the ballot yet, but you could see the wheels turning in the people's heads trying to get something formulated.
Yep.
This is what they believe, and this is what they think everybody else should want.
Explain what it is, because we haven't covered it in a while.
So Initiative 98 would essentially change and alter the way that wildlife is managed on public and private land and the way the habitat and the resources are managed as well. And I think that it would essentially befuddle the existing format that we've got, the agency that we've got, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and maybe even get into the side conversation of the Department of Natural Resources, and it would make it impractical because the people that would be making the decisions would be appointed and have no knowledge about anything. Not that we have a lot of people knowledgeable in the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission right now, but it would be structured so much to where it would, as I mentioned, it would defund the agency and it would disband and erode the management side of the agency to the point to where they would decide, that one body would decide what you could do on your ground for anything. And the same thing on public land. It would essentially, it doesn't say this, but it essentially create a sanctuary state if these individuals deemed it necessary to not harvest or not manage or not interact with all game species or all wildlife, period.
I haven't read it in a while because when I first got wind of this, it was within an email that was sent out by a cattlemen's group, and just for like the average listener is like, yeah, this doesn't sound that bad. I read it and just immediately felt sick to my stomach.
Yep.
I mean, it like depressed me. I was like, oh no, this is a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Wrapped up in ribbons. It sounds good. And again, I haven't read it for a while, but forgive me if I'm wrong, but the funding is totally on It was like completely fund through fines, wasn't it?
Well, and 0.05% tax that would have generated what, in their words, $150 million a year to run this subsection of what they're trying to create. And that it mentions in there that if the current existing agency was not able to function, we would replace that.
I read that as, and then we will gut the agency and have this overarching.
Yes.
Yeah. So it is truly a scary initiative.
To me, it's almost looking at like a livestock board or the Department of Agriculture, and let's just say that whoever runs the pet industry now can turn around and make the decisions on wildlife or wildlife and agriculture if they wanted to. Or maybe it's just somebody that runs grocery stores, or maybe it's somebody that they just turn around and appoint that is more favorable to the animal rights or animal extremism side of things. This is not an animal welfare component. It's an extremist mentality to change and alter the ability to manage wildlife in a historical and traditional manner. And if they get traction with that, it'll be something similar to what was tried to pass in Oregon with IP3, where they wanted to make that a sanctuary state. You couldn't kill a mouse, you couldn't fish, you couldn't run cattle unless they were, I think I'll probably misspeak here, but past the normal breeding life, then you could turn around and kill the cow. So up until that time, you couldn't kill that cow or a pig or a chicken or a rabbit or anything else. You couldn't hunt, you couldn't fish, you couldn't do any of it. Now, it didn't get onto the ballot, but 30% of the people that turn around and got the signatures to get it on the ballot, they signed the damn signatures. That's the scary part, is sometimes people just sign things and get people out of their face, put their name on it just to be able to turn around. It sounds like a good idea, the Biodiversity Protection Act. Well, who wouldn't want good biodiversity? Who wouldn't want a good ecosystem?
Absolutely.
Who wouldn't want wildlife and animal stewardship? It's the terminology that's used that befuddles the average voter. And the thing that scares me is that people just turn around and have the opportunity to check a box, yes or no. And there was people on 127 that, I mean, they called me that listened to our rhetoric for 14 months and said, Gates, I really don't know how I should vote on this, because the
wording is so confusing.
Yeah,
it's so true.
Shall you do this or that? And that's why we were so adamant and so steadfast in trying to make sure that we got trophy hunting out of that. But if we have to go through the title board on this other stuff, or we talk about what was formerly Initiative 13, which is now Initiative 154, and that's from the Smart Wolf policy guys that are trying to stop the introduction of wolves and prohibit wolves, put a pause on it. No wolves could be introduced after December 31st of 2026. Well, we're pretty well convinced that that's not going to happen anyway. But to show the lunacy that they're going back to the wheelhouse on that they got 25,000 signatures when they needed about 200,000 to get the 124,000 on the threshold for the signatures. They raised about $48,000 from 62 donors. They were unsuccessful, so they suspended their operations the week before the deadline. I think it was August 27th. Now they're going back to the wheelhouse again to turn around and try to do it. The problem is that the more confusion that groups like that, whether they're supposed to be doing it on our behalf or not, the problem is that the confusion that they create becomes more and more convoluted, and it really does make people wonder what they should support and what they shouldn't support.
Yes.
And if it does get on the ballot, and they do that, okay, was it of any benefit? But if it does get on the ballot and it doesn't go through, what benefit was there besides sticking $2 or $3 or $4 million into something to confuse people and create a rural divide? A real rural divide, which is probably more catastrophic than an urban rural divide, because once you get our side fighting amongst each other, fighting amongst themselves, now we're going to see a lot more opportunity for the antis to be able to find that chink in the armor.
I totally agree. In trying to, I think the pause in wolf reintroduction that we were asking for and didn't get was a really reasonable ask. It was a really reasonable ask. But with an initiative like that, by the time it actually went through, how many wolves are we going to have on the ground?
Yes.
This has already happened. This
I'd rather have that $3 or $4 million that was generated from each side of the fence, $7 million, to make sure that this didn't pass or that didn't pass, went into the program, went into the management, it went into the livestock producers to be able to turn around and do the flattery and do the livestock protection and do the range riders, as opposed to allowing people to start voting on wildlife politics again.
Yep.
We feel that there was a mistake. The proponents of Proposition 114 feel like that was a success, although it might not have gone the way they wanted so far. But either way, it's a done deal. And I think we have to figure out a way to, as the old saying, cut bait and move on, and figure out how to make it work within what we have to deal with, and then worry about all the other stuff that people are going to continually throw out there that are coming up, whether it's Initiative 98 or Initiative 154. And I'm pretty well convinced that we're going to have other initiatives before next March that are going to try to get on the ballot for 2026. And I think there's more important things to worry about, because a lot of this stuff is going to happen through the natural cycle of attrition.
I agree. And I think it's important to put that money into something like 98. This is dangerous. It is really dangerous. And we need to get the message out of what it really means. Because like you say, it's packaged with this really nice language. And then if you want to talk about, we're talking about, let's not have ballot box biology, putting that back on the ballot as ballot box biology again, so let's get our message clear on that this shouldn't be voted on by the voters. We
Leave
need
it to the experts.
Yes, exactly.
Where do you want to be in 20 years?
With the state, with regards to the state?
Yeah.
Okay. Or like me personally?
Both.
Like on a beach somewhere?
Yeah, on a beach, singing your tunes with a guitar.
Yeah.
It was like Kenny Chesney or something.
Me personally, in 20 years as a rancher, I want to be, ranching well, feeling good about what I'm doing, feeling good about my stewardship, still ranching, I hope. I want to still be ranching and be able to do it in a way that my animals are healthy and safe and the wildlife is healthy and safe. And for the state in 20 years, I want some of these kind of extreme pendulum swings to stop happening. I want us as a state to say, oh, this was a mistake. Maybe we shouldn't be going down this extreme rabbit hole. Truly, and I know that this is a beautiful state and people want to be here. I would hope that maybe our population might be leveling off. Again, I don't want to be the gatekeeper of like, don't move here, but I
wouldn't hurt your feelings though in some areas.
I will not lie. When Wolf Reintroduction was on the ballot, I said, if we vote yes, can we get rid of some people? Because and I don't mean that in a mean way. It's just that when you look at this landscape, what can we support here?
Right.
And it's hard on our wild places to have this many people trampling through. And 6 million people living, and I think you said in your podcast, however gajillion, many millions of people visiting.
84 million visitors.
Yes, that's a lot of people.
And when you look at the comparison of Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, that we have more of a resident population than those three states combined. We have 3 times the amount of annual visitors than those 3 states combined. But look at the total area that those 3 states encompass. They're a lot bigger than Colorado in totality.
Yes.
And I'm hopeful that individuals like you get a chance to continue the stewardship of the landscape, the wildlife, and be a producer that's feeding the population.
Absolutely.
And I think that, what you bring to the table is a valuable asset, but your perspectives are valuable enough to get people to understand too. You're not the old gray-haired white guy that you look at things from a different perspective, and I would hope that people would acknowledge that.
Well, thank you. And that's I guess what I hope for the future is more knowledge and understanding about what the history of the state looks like and why there's livestock. Why are there cattle grazing in these hills? Could we raise crops up here? No. Why do we have animal agriculture in the mountains? You cannot grow anything other than grass and hay for cattle, and I hope that in 20 years, we've kind of reached a little bit of a balance there where we can all respect our state and respect the history and respect each other, which sounds very pie in the sky probably and hopeful. But what do you hope for in 20 years?
I'll be dead by then, so I don't have to worry about it. So I would hope that in 20 years my kid gets to turn around and have a chance to live the life that I've been able to do without having to fight so much to be able to do it.
Absolutely.
What my life has become is a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week fight to stay in business and stay alive because of different perspectives and ideologies. And I think that people in the Front Range see some of that because their lives are attacked in some way, shape, or form. Not to the extent that what we are, because it's the urban-rural divide. It's a different perspective. It's, we just came from Nebraska over the weekend, and we were up there doing a conference, and we drove on Highway 20 from Chadron, Nebraska, all the way to Douglas, Wyoming, and saw like 12 cars on the entire road for, 150 miles. You turn around and hit Cheyenne and drive home, and I mean, it's asshole to elbow for 200 miles, and you cannot stop anywhere because somebody's on your ass and somebody's slamming on the brakes in the front. That's not what my kid wants to live in, and I don't either. But I would hope that people would start to understand how important our wildlife and natural resources are and what it takes. A lot of people understand how important they are, but they don't know what it takes, just like they don't know what it takes for you to be able to continue to produce your lifestyle to feed the general public, and how to do that in a very thoughtful, professional manner.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can get to there, but
I hope so. Even if you win a few people over, where you can come up in the mountains to recreate and consider what is happening around you and what is the wildlife doing and maybe what impact you're having. What impact does your vote have? And are you helping or hurting? So.
You got any final thoughts?
Well, I would like to thank you guys for the extreme amount of time that you've dedicated to fighting the good fight, because I really respect it. And I'm just learning about some of these things that you've been embedded in for many years. So thank you to you guys. Thank you to some of my neighbors. I mentioned Middle Park stock growers and some of our local ranchers who have spent so much time, getting our perspective out and making sure that, as wolf reintroduction progresses, that we have the tools that we need. And thank you to our local CPW guys for sticking through this really frustrating situation. And I think my final thoughts are just maybe try to change your perspective of what, if you want to box people in, of like, what are rural people thinking, doing, what are we about up here? Because we love our animals, we love the wildlife. I think we're doing a good job, and I think we should be supported in the good job that we're doing.
If you had your chance to think, and we could talk like this on and on, and I could just keep going, but if you had your chance to talk to a couple legislators and just very briefly give them a 30-second or 1-minute elevator speech about how your life has been affected and that you'd like them to be considerate of what happens off of the Front Range, what would you say to them?
I think I would say that even though as a subset of the population, we might be a smaller number of people than some of your constituents, we are representing a big part of the landscape and important industries, and that I would really hope that they would listen to our voices, because we have a lot of say in what happens in a big part of the state.
Pretty good answer. How about your music? You want to plug it?
Oh, yeah.
Anybody wants to look it up?
Yeah, you can find me on Spotify and iTunes.
Yeah.
So, or you can get on my website and order a CD, and then I'll actually get the money.
They do actually get the
money. Instead of like the 3 cents on Spotify.
So I sure appreciate you taking the time and coming up. I mean, you did some stuff during the campaign last year. You worked with Sean. You and I hadn't met until today, but we talked, and appreciate your volunteerism and what you're trying to do just to be able to help spread the word. And it takes people that care about it, that are thoughtful, that have boots on the ground experience. And you're obvious that, you're part of the equation on this, and we appreciate all your help as well.
Well, thank you. I think grassroots campaigns have power. So I hope that, one small part of that, I'm happy to be part of it.
We might ask you back at some point down the road to see how things are progressing, and maybe it'll be on good terms, but if wolves really take up occupancy here, we might call you back in and say, okay, now we need to do a call to action. This is raising the red flag up. So
yeah, for sure. We'll see what happens.
Don't hesitate to reach out, and we look forward to future conversations.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Caitlyn.
Found my daddy sitting in his rocking chair, looking out the window today. He was remembering the good old days as he looked out over the sage. He said, "Did I tell you about the place I was raised, the ranch we called Ute Park? We learned what hard work meant in those days, way up the Williams Fork. Ooh, those white-faced cattle on that high country grass, snow up on the divide. Carry me up to Ptarmigan Peak, spread my ashes there when I die." Let me give you some advice now, girls, when those young horses give you a turn. Listen close and I'll tell to you what took me a long time to learn. Don't use horses like we did, we was too damn rough in those days. Keep your mind in the middle and a gentle touch on the reins. Ooh, those white-faced cattle on that high country grass, snow up on the divide. Carry me up to Ptarmigan Peak, spread my ashes there when I die. Legacies up in those snowfields, girls, on Ptarmigan way up high. Come spring, it'll all melt down, you know. I'll be back on the ranch in July. You'll see me in the Timothy heads that wave in the afternoon breeze. Think of me out on your favorite horse, I'm the sun that's kissing your cheek. Ooh, those white-faced cattle on that high country grass, snow up on the divide. Carry me up to Ptarmigan Peak, spread my ashes there when I die. Carry me up to Ptarmigan Peak, with nary a tear in your eye.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Through the Gates. For more content like this, make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe on all of our channels.